Welcome back. With me today is Dr. Seth Oster. Welcome.
Hi, welcome.
And you are the Assistant Clinical Professor at Auburn University.
Correct.
And recently we just had an American bald eagle released on West Point Lake. That release was done on Saturday, May the 27th.
Yep.
And this eagle was huge for this area. Last time we had an eagle release at West Point Lake was back in 2011. So can you tell us a little bit more about the bald eagle that was released on Saturday?
So this particular eagle that we released Saturday, this bird was found around the end of February in Jackson, Georgia. At that time the bird wasn't able to fly. The local residents called out Georgia Department of Natural Resources. They were able to capture the bird and transport it to us. We did our physical. We always, when we first get our birds, do a nice full physical on them. That particular bird didn't have any fractures, which was good. So the probable reason why it couldn't fly was it had some soft tissue injury, so injury to the muscle or the tendons or the nerves in the wings. So we rested that patient and gave it some anti-inflammatories, and after about a week and a half it was able to regain flight. So we moved that bird to one of our large outdoor enclosures for it to regain its flight ability. Raptors are like athletes. When they go back out to the wild, they have to be at 100% to function. There's no retirement for them. There's no taking it easy. They can't play, 3/4 of the game. So we had to wait till this bird got back to 100% flight ability. So during that process, it molted its feathers, which is a normal process for them to lose feathers and grow new ones. So her flight ability decreased a little bit during that time period, but ultimately she recovered by the end of April, and we got ready to release her.
And that's so exciting. We don't see a whole lot of eagles in Georgia. Of course, there's a couple reasons why we start to see eagles in this area. They could be migratory birds that come through, or they could be residential birds, birds that have taken up habitat in our areas, and because there's a sustainable food source, habitat, and security. We start to see a lot of that on West Point Lake and other Corps of Engineer managed facilities where we have created artificial man-made lakes, because it creates that ideal habitat. We have many nests in Georgia, I think over 200.
Yeah, the latest reports from this past survey with Georgia DNR was over 200 active nests.
And that's wonderful, and there's quite a few on West Point Lake that our viewers are likely to see out in the mornings. I know near West Point Dam there are a few in the tree line. They're not publicly known for a very important reason, though, I believe.
Yeah, there's about 5 to 6 active nests on West Point itself. There's a number of inactive nests. Eagles oftentimes will have multiple nests, only using one at their preferred site. So there's a number of nests around. There's about 5 that are active.
And usually they'll come back to that same nest year after year, correctly?
Yep, and they'll keep building to the nest year after year and keep adding to it, and there's been reports of eagle nests being upwards of 2,000 pounds.
Wow, that's like the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. It's a car in a tree.
Yeah, they keep building year after year.
And those are platform nests, correct? So there's sticks and twigs on top of a tree, and they just keep building it up.
Yep, and sometimes various services will make man-made platforms for them to build nests on, and that's important, because when we get those 2,000-pound nests, it doesn't take much of a breeze on the top of a tree to knock that over.
Yeah, sometimes that human intervention of giving them a more stable platform that's not going to fall over due to erosion or different things. Now, also what we have on West Point Lake are ospreys, and we have a different gentleman who's going to speak with us about the differences between eagles and ospreys, but we also have those platforms on the water on West Point. Now, the American bald eagles, we see them, and there's something very interesting about their color patterns. Can you tell the difference between a male and a female when they're flying in the sky?
You shouldn't be able to.
No.
They are the same externally. So they're going to have that white head and that white tail. They don't get that coloration until they're about 5 to 6 years old. So it's a mature bird by the time it gets that coloration. Oftentimes the immature birds they're brown with maybe some white mottled feathers, and they're commonly confused with golden eagles, which are not very common here in the South.
No, you don't usually see them near water too often. They're out in the fields.
Yeah. So we do see the adults with that coloration. We can't tell the difference. Technically, you need to have a DNA sample to tell the difference between the two of them. Now, in terms of some slight differences, the females generally in raptor species are larger than the males. This particular eagle that we released weighed about 4.2 kilograms. So for those of you working in pounds, that's about 9.5 to 10 pounds. So that is probably a female, being a very large bird for the species.
And from a glance, seeing them next to each other, you probably won't see that slight difference. But in the sky, you mentioned that they don't get their white coloration on their heads and their tail feathers until about 5 years old. So, you know, in the sky, you can very commonly confuse them also with maybe a vulture.
Yep, certainly. Vultures have a very similar wingspan. They're around 6 feet. And the difference being with the vultures, if you can't identify their heads, clearly the vultures don't have feathers on their heads. That's an adaptation for rooting around in carcasses. Now some vultures, turkey vultures for instance, do have white feathers, but they're on their wings. They're on the bottom of their primary feathers, but the rest of their feathers are kind of a dark brown or a black. One
of the things that I see in movies a lot is when there's a movie scene with an eagle in the background and they make a specific noise or a call, they mistakenly overlap the real sound with the sound of maybe a red-tailed hawk.
Yeah, that's very common. The eagles don't make that loud call that you're expecting. Yeah, they kind of more cackle. Yeah, so it's not a very graceful call, and I can see why if I were a filmmaker. Yeah, if I were a filmmaker, I see why maybe I might want to slip that red-tailed call in. So.
Oh, eagles are a fascinating bird. They're beautiful, but they also they are vultures.
Yeah, they are highly adaptable. They will eat obviously fish, and that's why we try to release a lot of them near major water sources. But they will take other birds. They'll take mammals, and they will scavenge. It's not uncommon for us to find young birds that are poor hunters scavenging off carcasses.
That's important to note.
Yeah.
When the food supply is not there, or maybe you're in an area that the water's frozen over, they will start to take advantage of animals and small mammals alongside of the road. And is that one of the reasons why you get birds sent to you that need medical attention? What are some of the causes that the eagles get hurt?
We see a lot of different reasons. Most commonly is trauma, and that could be a young bird that falls out of a nest. That could be a bird that's collided with a man-made object. Occasionally we do see evidence of foul play, so gunshots. But probably the biggest reason, if you wanted to lump it all into a category, is these birds usually hang around the parents for a year or two to learn, and then eventually the parents kick them out and run them off the nest, and they have to learn to provide for themselves, and that is a very tough time for a young bird, eagles included, but all raptors. And during that phase of their life, they have upwards of a 90% mortality rate. So these birds struggle, and that's their natural life cycle. There's going to be a lot of birds that don't make it through that period. They don't learn to adapt to hunt and provide for themselves. They might have trouble finding a home territory because they try to pick a territory with good resources, and other eagles have already claimed that and run them off. So that's when we end up seeing, we see majority of our birds are immature birds that are coming in, so probably somewhere in that life phase, or older birds that have had trauma.
Well, thank you for elaborating a little bit more on that. Now, talons, the size of a bald eagle, it's very large. You kind of mentioned that they have a 6-foot wingspan, but their talons can also be around 3-4 inches long. So using caution if you see a bird.
Yeah, they average about 2.5 inches, depending on which toe you're dealing with. They have a very strong grip. In fact, most of our raptors, particularly things like our hawks and our eagles, they actually have kind of like a ratchet system when it comes to their tendons. There's little ridges on their tendons, so when they contract and they squeeze their foot closed, those tendons kind of lock in place, and then they can relax the muscle. And what that means is they can get a really strong grip, and then they can relax their muscles so their arms don't get tired like we would if we were really trying to squeeze something. They don't get tired, so they can maintain that grip for a very long period of time, and that's often how they kill their prey, is getting that strong grip and holding it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You see them coming down, they may catch a large fish. I've actually seen some eagles swim. They can actually paddle themselves to shore if their prey is too big, but then they usually fly up to a tree. So they'll need to be able to grip onto a branch too and be able to have full control of their body muscles.
Yep, they can release that. When dealing with these birds, we use a lot of precaution. There's videos of us releasing these eagles, but we typically use very thick, specialized gloves, leather gloves, and they come up to about mid-forearm or mid-upper arm on us. Our regular gloves come to about our mid-forearm, so we use additional precaution when dealing with these birds. If you were to see one in the wild and you had to capture it, The most important thing to remember is their feet are their weapons. So if I were to use a big towel to try to get control of that animal, the first thing I want to get control of is its legs. You know, its beak is also an important tool for it. It's going to bite and tear its prey item when it's eating it, and that's how it tears it up into chunks. But the most important thing is just getting control of those feet.
Thank you. For our viewers, if they wanted to get more information about what you guys do down at Auburn University, how can they get in contact with you guys if they need help with a bird that they see?
So the easiest thing for anyone to do would be to contact us either at the vet school. So we take in injured birds of prey 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that's handled through the College of Veterinary Medicine. We are part of that college, so that phone number is 334-844-9966. That gets you the front desk of our vet school, and they can give you directions in terms of how to get to us with the animal. They can also transfer calls to us. We do have a number for our office, but we are limited in our staff, and we're not always present in the office. We're oftentimes out working with the birds or in our treatment room doing procedures, so we're not there to answer the phone. So that's the number I prefer people to use. Alternatively, if you're interested in learning more about the Raptor Center, auburn.edu/raptor directs you to our website. From there, we have information on how to capture an injured bird, so we have some demonstration videos. We have instructions on how to get the bird to us. We also have an educational department. We have 3 full-time educators with about 28 non-releasable birds. They do about 200 programs a year, so there's methods to contact them if you're interested in educational programs or tours of the facility. And then if you were just a super bird nerd like some of us, we also keep all of our case records up there. So if you were dropping off a bird and you were interested in following up with it to see what's happened, you can call us and get the case number, and then you can follow the record online and see how that bird is progressing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. For more information about the bald eagles here in Georgia, also go to www.georgiawildlife.com for some of the state rules and regulations. Thank you again so much, Mr. Oster, for being on the show with us today.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. We'll be right back.